Everybody, it's Jack. I just wanted to jump on here and make a video for my top 10 CD only releases of 2021. This is the first year in a while that I've been buying stuff that's only available on CD. I usually stick with vinyl, but there's way too much good stuff coming out, and all 10 of these I just absolutely needed in my collection. I could have easily gone with 20, but I decided to go with my top 10. So hopefully these are the best of the best. You guys know I listen to a lot of music, so if you usually agree with me or if you have similar tastes, these are absolute safe crafts, I could say. The first one I have here is by the band Upon the Altar. This is a Latin title, Absid ab Ordine Luminis, Far from the Order of Light, and that's a great title for this. This is a debut album from the Polish band. Black metal, very true to its roots, but still branches out with some new school sounds. Very bleak, very dark, but they keep the energy pretty high. It isn't necessarily like overly depressing or doomy. It's very propulsive and very much enraged. So this is awesome to check out. It was released on the Putrid Cult label, Polish black metal, Upon the Altar. This is their debut. Next up, we've got Throne, Pestilent Dawn. These guys are from Michigan, USA. This is blackened death metal. Honestly, I would probably call it mixed metal if I were writing a review. In general, it's death metal, but they really add a lot of hardcore, metalcore, kind of that new school abrasive, almost industrial sounding vibes. You can kind of tell by the cover what this album is going to sound like. It is very abrasive, very dark. But again, a lot like Upon the Altar, they temper it with really good energy. You get the feeling that there's some sort of catharsis going on, as opposed to just a bunch of random noise. So from Michigan, debut album. This is on Redefining Darkness. Redefining Darkness, one of my favorite labels. I would say these days they do about 3-to-1 CD only, and then every now and then you'll get an LP out of them. CD only for Throne, Pestilent Dawn, very cool. If you are at all tolerant of kind of metallic hardcore influence in your death metal, this is a can't miss because they just absolutely nail the style in this kind of searing, just like I said, very powerful manner. So Throne, Pestilent Dawn, coming out of Redefining Darkness, their debut. Up next, we have Immense, Torture Banished. These guys are from Indonesia. I think this is the first of 3 Indonesian bands on this list. Didn't plan that. It's just been incredible, the music that they've been putting out. This is their 3rd album, brutal death metal, exactly what you'd expect from the Brutal Mind label. Everything Brutal Mind puts out is top tier. It just seems like if it's not good, they don't put it out. Their quality control is just amazing. This is on the higher end of brutality for brutal death metal. It is very suffocating, very thick, very kind of downward facing, not a lot of like hope or melody or anything like that. But what is actually on here will just absolutely destroy you. So highly recommended. Their other albums are just as good. They're a little bit harder to get. This one's available from like indie merch store along with the other Brutal Mind stuff for cheap, like $10 shipped or something, which is just absurd. Yeah, I would just highly recommend this. It is so dark, so heavy. From the very first song, you'll kind of get the understanding of how punished you're going to get, and really dark subject matter, drug abuse, just crazy shit. So not for the faint of heart for sure. Next up in the 4 spot, we've got Ildaruni, Beyond Unseen Gateways. These guys are from Armenia. I think this might be my only CD from an Armenian band. I think I've got a couple LPs, but this is their debut album, and this impressed the hell out of me. This is like blackened folk metal. Thinking folk metal, I always think of different instrumentation, pagan instruments, kind of an earthy feel to the music, and that's exactly what this is. They nail it. There are woodwind instruments, there are string instruments, but really it's there to complement the already really powerful kind of blackened death metal that's on here. Some bands have those extra folk elements, and it seems like that was kind of the point of the song. For this, they're already awesome, and then they kind of elevate it with those additional instrumentations. Cool vocals, long, big songs. I think like all the songs on here are like 6 or 7 minutes long. And similar to some of the like newer school atmospheric black metal bands, it's not, verse, chorus, verse, bridge. It's just one crazy section after another, one passage after another. It just kind of takes you on a journey. So Armenian folk metal. I mean, if you haven't heard this, I would just highly recommend it because it doesn't sound like much else that came out this year. This is on Black Lion Records out of Sweden. They've just been putting out one great album after another this year. This was my favorite, so I had to pick this one up. Ildaruni, Beyond Unseen Gateways from Armenia. Next up, I know a lot of people were all over this album, De-trit-i-vore. So, De-trit-i-vore from Indonesia, Scattered Remnants. This is their debut album. More brutal death metal on the Brutal Mind label. Brutal Mind, Brutal Death, it goes perfectly. This is a lot more old school death metal as opposed to like technical. It's still ultra, ultra heavy, very, very brutal, but there's much more of a it sounds more like four guys playing instruments and making a racket than it does, some alien soundscape or anything like that. I absolutely hate the intro and the outro. Be sure to skip those because they will just drag the album down. But the actual songs that are on here are really some of the best, just pure death metal of the year. Enraged, serious, hard, heavy playing. The drummer on this album, plays the drums like he's punishing them for disappointing him, and it's just gorgeous. And yeah, for Brutal Mind, it's actually a little bit low on the brutality scale. It's a lot more like something you might expect from like Metal Blade or something like that. But it's so good that really tags and descriptions don't matter. If you like death metal, you have to hear this. The Cryptivore, Scattered Remnants. I guess that's a word that means something that eats dead material. I'd never heard that word before, so I had to write down how to say it. Next up, we're going to the Netherlands. Dutch death metal. This is Buried with Oculus Rot. This is their debut album. One more on Brutal Mind. This is, again, way, way more focused on kind of old school, pure death metal vibes. They remind me a lot of Deranged, kind of like medium length songs with lots of like really chunky riffs. Like every song has multiple riffs where you're just kind of like just grooving with it. And by the end of the album, you look back and you realize pretty much every song was just loaded with awesome riffs. Great energy. The production on this is especially good. It's got a that kind of like grimy old school vibe, but everything just kind of like leaps off of the page or into your headphones or however you want to put it. Really, really cool stuff. I mean, there's no gimmicks, there's no extra ultra brutality, there's nothing like that. It's just great songs, great riffs, played with some serious hate in their hearts. So highly recommend that one. Buried out of the Netherlands, another debut album that's just way better than it should be. Up next, we've got a band. This is their debut album, but they've been around a long time, 7 or 8 years, putting out EPs and demos and things like that. But this is Soothsayer, Echoes of the Earth. This is on Transcending Obscurity Records. Everybody knows that I'm a big Transcending Obscurity fanboy. It's almost safe to assume that anything they put out is going to be worth owning just because it's going to be weird, it's going to be out there. They do a lot of vinyl, but I think they slowed down quite a bit this year to my benefit because I cannot afford all their vinyl. But this album blew me away. It is like sludge doom, like really nothing I've ever heard before. It's very, very ceremonial and very hypnotic. You'll put this album on and you can listen to it with all your attention and appreciate all the riffs and really get into it. Or you can put it on in the background and it feels like this kind of horror movie that's just kind of taking place. It works on so many levels. The quality of the songwriting and the depth of the variety on here is just something that you should not miss. So if you've been looking for something different in the Doom category, kind of Doom adjacent, and you missed this one, check it out right away because they absolutely destroy the vibe. And cover art is a great indication, kind of just a world on fire, everything's burning kind of vibe. But they vary up the pace, they vary up the heaviness to it, and it's very, very cool. So, Soothsayer, Echoes of the Earth out of Ireland, their debut LP. Next up, if I was doing them in order, this would probably be number one just based on how many times I've listened to it. But this is Plagueborne, Blueprint for Annihilation. These guys are out of Germany. This is their debut album. Technical death metal. They do not go overboard with the Weedle-dee-dee technicality. It is way more about delivering chunky riffs and just infuriated performances. The level of fiery rage on this album is pretty much unmatched in the actual like death metal category. I've definitely heard some like grind and some industrialized stuff that's been a little bit more hateful. But as far as just an album of some guys banging on instruments to make death metal, this is just absurd. The fact that this is a debut makes no sense. They've been around for a little bit, but yeah, the quality of the songwriting. There are 10 songs on here, and almost every one will leave you kind of like wiping sweat off your forehead because it's just pedal to the metal, insane death metal. You just, yeah, you have to check it out. I absolutely love it. On top of that, you could argue it's got maybe a little water metal in it. You can see the cover has got some sharks swimming through a flooded street. It's way more on the fire metal, earth metal sounding side, but they're honorary water metal for flooding that horrible city and killing all those terrible people. Plagueborne, Blueprint for Annihilation. If you're into death metal and you haven't heard this, forget the rest of the video. Just listen to this album. That's all you really need. Next up, this is a really cool one. This one took me totally by surprise. Not just how much I liked it, but the fact that I found a copy. This is Death Struggle, Beyond the Wail of Arctic Winds. How about a black metal title for a Melodeath album? Yeah, these guys are from Russia. This is just unique. It is, I would categorize it as melodic death metal, but it doesn't sound like At the Gates Part 10,000. Instead, they walk a pretty interesting line between black metal and death metal riffing and song structure. And then there's just some melody in there. They mix in lead guitar melody. They mix in some really cool rhythm guitar melody that is very unique for the genre. Like I said, lots of genre bending here, blending. It's awesome. I heard this album, it stood out. I saw a copy for sale. I was so excited. These guys are from Russia. This is on Gate of the Silver Key Records, which is a sub label of Lord of the Sick out of Russia, which is one of my favorite brutal death metal albums or labels, excuse me. So hopefully, Gate of the Silver Key will be churning out some, more Blackened, more melodic stuff from that label because whoever's picking the bands there really knows exactly what I'm looking for. So Death Struggle, Beyond the Wail of Arctic Winds, a classic Norwegian black metal title for you. Last one I saved. I saved the best for last in the sense that I haven't heard anybody talking about this album, and it's so good that I wanted to give it a prominent spot in the video. This is Perverted Dexterity, Alacrity for Contemptuous Dissonance. One more Indonesian brutal death metal artist on the list from Brutal Mind, of course, an Indonesian label that just knows what they're doing. This is a one-man project. The one guy, this is their third LP. He plays all the instruments, he does the vocals, but he used a session drummer on this full length. This guy, I had to look him up to make sure he was a human being. The drumming on this album needs to be heard to be believed. The kick drum, especially on this album, is almost an album all its own. You could just listen to the kick drum on this album, it would probably entertain you. But of course, there's a lot more going on. I would say from the minute this album starts until it ends, it's going to be one of the heaviest things you will ever hear. The vocals have this crazy sustain. They never stop. So it's just like this gurgling from the depths of hell. The guitars are so heavy that you have to listen to it multiple times before you can even kind of identify a riff or two. But once you can, you start to realize that there's some really great riffs on here. Incredibly thick, incredibly powerful stuff. This is one of my favorites of the year for a bunch of reasons, but the number one thing that I like about this is it is so uncompromising. There's very little experimentation, there's very little branching out, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't get boring, it doesn't blend together, it doesn't seem like one long song. It's just this incredibly powerful, from another planet kind of sound. So, maybe not my favorite album on the list, but definitely the one I would recommend the highest, just so you can say, yeah, I've heard that one. Pretty intense. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I might make more videos now that I am sober and I have more time to do it. It's really just to entertain myself, but obviously I appreciate any feedback you guys can give. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.